Hi, my name is Dr. Laurence Brock. My NDE happened years ago in 1976. I was in my early 20s. I had been living in the US, and I had been living in Colorado, and I came working in a restaurant, and I came back east to visit my parents in Westchester, New York. And I came with my roommate, who was also from the area, so we both came back to spend some time with our parents. We drove straight from Colorado to New York, so we were kind of tired. We got back there, and we drove in his car. I went to my parents, he went to his, and we rested for a while. I don't remember the details, but one of us found out about a party a friend of ours was having from high school, and we decided to go. I took my mom's car she had a little Ford Bobcat, and I took that to the party, and my friend took his car to the party. We were there partying, listening to music, dancing, drinking, smoking pot. Um, and I was high, but I didn't think that high that I couldn't drive. But back in the 1970s, people did not really think twice about drinking and driving. They were not as smart, I guess, as people are now. And I kind of pretended to be higher than I thought I was, so I could leave my car there and go back the next day and flirt with the young lady who was having the party. And almost back to my parents. So I asked my friend to drive me. I told the woman that I was going to leave my car there. Almost back to my parents, I realized my sister needed to use the car the next day for work. So I explained to my friend. He drove me back to the party. I went in to tell the woman I was taking my car. I remember leaving the party. I still can see that image in my mind. You know, it now it, I don't drink very often now at all, but and I would never get that drunk. But I still can see, I see a lot of people, or the images, there's a lot of people there, and the colors are a little brighter and a little hazy. And, I, again, didn't think twice of getting in the car and driving. Um, so apparently what happened, and well, I do remember leaving the party. I don't actually remember walking out the door or getting into my car. And what apparently happened is I fell asleep and smashed into a tree. um, so the next thing I remember after almost walking out the door is I was out of my body, floating in the white light, not going in the tunnel or anything like that, but in the white light, looking down. It was nighttime where I was looking, where I was, it was white all around me. I mean, and people asked me if I had a body. I thought I had a body. I didn't really look down, but it felt like I had a body. Um, Behind me, there was a big circle of a different shade of white, and within there was like a full silhouette of a person that was a third shade of white, and like certain energy radiating off of that person, even another shade of white with a little bit of gold in there. And the experience was very feeling kinesthetic, and it just seemed like, all these years I've been trying to figure out how to explain it. And anyway, it just felt like this amazing loving, like everything was all right. I could see my body with my head cracked open. You can still see I have the scar, it goes all the way back here. And everything seemed okay. I mean, it wasn't like a party, like everything's great, great, great. It was just like everything was okay. Everything made sense. Everything was peaceful. It just a certain knowing in there. And see, when I talked about it, I start to connect to, and it's like, oh yeah, everything is just okay and good. Within what seemed like a pretty short time, the being behind me said, "You have to go back. Your father wants you to stay." I knew at that time the father was not my physical father, but God. So I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. A lot of my understanding of what happened, so what I just said is what I experienced. I did not know what to make of it. I didn't really tell too many people about it for quite a while because there was no internet. It wasn't like near-death experience was a thing I ever heard of. And it's interesting because after I healed a bit, I went back out to Colorado for a little while. I was living there. My mother convinced me to come back east and start to work for my dad, so I did that. After that, one day I was sitting in my apartment. All of a sudden, someone knocks on the door, which, nowadays, if someone knocks on my door, I assume it's an Amazon package, to tell you the truth, and I don't even answer. Back then, someone knocks, it's like, oh yeah, someone's here. And I answered the door. There was this beautiful woman at the door, and she basically came in. She was the sister of a friend of mine from Colorado who I had mentioned my experience to. And I could say I told her about my NDE, but I didn't use those words. And this woman who was at my door said, I heard some interesting things about you, and I know someone who teaches about what happens after you die, and I want to introduce you to him. And it was like, I knew this happened all those years ago, but a few years ago I realized, wow, that is so cool that this woman just showed up at my door. Right? It's like, again, these cool, in a lot of ways, the coolest things that happened since then are I just started meeting a lot of people, a lot of that. So it ended up that teacher had an NDE, a lot of his students did, and I just still keep meeting these amazing spiritual people all the time. One thing I noticed after, and it took a while to start to understand this. So one thing I noticed is my hands became warm when I understood people, touch people, and I did have a certain understanding that went with that. And I didn't really know what to make of it. So within those, I guess, months, it was, I don't know, I didn't want to really tell anyone. And then I met this teacher. He was a Sufi sheikh, and he started telling me stuff, and the words he used just rang so true inside of me. So right away, even though he was an Islamic teacher, he started to talk to me about Mary and just the love that Mary had of God that allowed the Christ energy to come in. And I realized, wow, that was the feeling I had during my NDE. Then he started to talk about Jesus, and I knew the being behind me was Jesus directing me. And even when I say that, I just feel this love come in. That's just, and I get kind of the tingles in my body, and it's so cool. The healing part developed. I mean, that guy, the Sufi sheikh. One thing he would usually, when I would ask him questions, he would tell me, "You don't need to know that." And he sort of explained some of my experiences to me, so I had words to put to it. And so I started studying with him. I started studying with other teachers and developed this. Again, it's such a different reference. Like nowadays, people have an NDE, they think, oh, something happened. I didn't think, I had no idea what to make of it. And it took, and still I'm studying. I guess it was kind of a blessing to not know, because in a way, when we know something, we're limiting it. And the part in the NDE is so, I mean, it is like, I don't even know how to say it, but you can see my hands are going, it's infinite, so that part of not knowing and even now, I've studied a lot. I mean, I studied with other teachers, I went to school, and still I know that I only know a very small part of it, so my mind is very open to learning more. Changed in me, and that part, I mean, I help people like all over the world. The energy I connect to that energy that I connected to in NDE, and it helps me. Like that, there's no denying that. So, did it happen? Was it all in my head? I have no idea. I don't really care, to tell you the truth. I mean, I know, but if someone doubts it, that's up to them. It does. It just, yeah. I read. So the Sufi sheikh was a teacher of the Mevlevi dervishes who followed the teachings of Jalaluddin Rumi. Rumi, the poet that a lot of people know about. But so I read. He wrote this book called the Masnawi, which was like all of his teachings, and these 3 volume, 6 books, 3 volume thing. And recently I read something, and it talks about how he's always trying to explain. He says, love on the physical level or on the spiritual level is a telescope to God. And he's always trying to explain the love. And then every time when he experiences it, he's ashamed of his explanation. And that is how it feels. And then it goes, even though when I explain it and I make sense of it, and I forget the exact wording, but it's good. But then the real love is way better. And it says thoughtless love is better. And that thing of being ashamed of the explanation, that's what it feels like. Because there is, people get it, but I have to say a lot. There's no way to explain it. But everyone has had something like that in their life, with your kids or someone that you just connect with for some unexplainable way. And then it just opens your heart up. And that, it's kind of funny because I try to tell my daughter, think of the thing you love most in the world and multiply it times 1,000,000. Then you have some idea of how much I love you. And how much I love her is what the closest thing that I've discovered to, how that feeling and the love from God. And so I don't know, we're trying to explain something that's unexplainable. Can you, and I know, I read online a lot of times people who've not had those experiences try to talk about it. And it's like, I don't know what to say to you because there's no way to get it through until you have some of those experiences. So about
Yeah.
5 years ago, I was teaching a class at the University of Bridgeport, and the woman who organized it for me after the class I taught, it was on mindfulness breathing and meditation. And she mentioned she was teaching a class about, um, I think it was called Death and Dying or Living and Dying. It was about different traditions from different cultures about dying. And I said to her, I had a near-death experience. I didn't realize it was such a thing that people were even interested in then, and she said, oh, you need to come talk to my class. And so I posted something on Facebook, mostly for my friends. And I was surprised everyone said, oh, I didn't know you had a near-death experience. And so it's, again, you can't really prove it, but so I do healing work and I work with people through video all over the world. And sometimes, most of the time, people feel it, but sometimes they really, really feel it. Like their body gets tingly, they have aches and pains that go away, and there's no denying it. That's a thing. And people used to say to me sometimes, how do you know it's not all in your head? They're in their head, and I don't care. They're getting better. Like, what's the difference? So when you have the joy and that connection to spirit, it's like a religion. Can you prove it? No. You know what I mean? Unless someone has that experience. So I don't know. Well, years ago, I had this woman who would have an appointment with me like once a month. And I could tell she wasn't really feeling it when I work with her. And I said this to her, do you feel what I'm doing? She goes, no. I said, why do you talk to me then? She goes, oh, I just have a feeling that it's good for me, which is fine with me. A lot of people do, but usually they feel it more directly after. And I got it in my head. I wanted her to feel it. So, and I know some of it is how people look at it in their mind. So I started talking to her about stuff, and she had done uh, transcendental meditation, and I don't know if she mentioned it to me or I just said, what do you think of quantum physics? Which is something I like, which is kind of a scientific way of explaining some spiritual things. And she said yes. So I started to talk to her some about that, and all of a sudden she said, I see all this purple light. And she felt it. And she felt all the energy in her body and everything. So I don't know, that it's like something I'm good at is directing people's mind to get that experience. But it's not just a mental thing, because once you open up in a certain part in your mind, then you get the feeling, then you understand. Mentally, you can't understand it, but she did. And I joke around, that was the last time I heard from her. So that must have been what she needed to get from me. Well, I did notice right away when I touched people, my hands would become warm. My intuition definitely increased. I did have some spiritual experiences before my NDE, but I just kind of ignored them, like then I couldn't ignore it. And I also meeting with teachers, I had very profound experiences, like with the Sufi Sheikh one time. He was teaching this class, and in he, he let me go to the class. I didn't really understand that much about it. It was about sacred geometry, and all the students there had been studying for some years, and I hadn't. So, I just wanted to be around him. And during one of the breaks, he said, "Here, come into my office." It was in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York City. He was always joking around like that. And he grabbed my hands. He said, "Give me your hands." He grabbed them and he goes, "There, you got it." I go, "What do you mean?" And then he looked at me, "Nope, give me your hands again." He goes, "Now you got it." And I didn't really know what he was even talking about, but after that, I noticed my hands became even warmer when I touched people, and the energy just started to even move more from that interaction with him. So it's again, I think it was a blessing that I didn't know what to label. Like now, people have that experience. Oh, it's an NDE. They, in their mind, they're thinking this, this, and this. I did not know. He would always say to me, any question I asked him, he would always say, "You don't need to know that." Like, and so I didn't have anything in my mind, so I always wanted to know. Yeah, I've just, I can do some really cool things with people, help. I had someone actually with COVID, and they were hurting in their body. I talked to them, all the pain was gone. It was kind of yeah, meditate, journal write, and trust that you have some amazing gift inside of you, even whatever it is. Everyone has a gift, and being a parent, what a gift. Cooking, cleaning, I do electrical work also. Do repairs in my house. These are gifts, and to really embrace them in the way that you appreciate that they're gifts from God. Your positive qualities, your intellect, whatever it is that you're good at, treat it like a gift from God and really appreciate yourself.